Hi everyone, welcome back to another Thoughtful Thursday. Today we're going to discuss another fascinating topic in GS paper 4, that is virtue ethics. At first glance, it seems like just another topic, just another theory we need to memorize for UPSC. But the more I read about it, the more I realize that it's actually a philosophy for life. So let's begin. Ethics can be broadly understood through three major approaches. The first is consequentialism, that asks what action will produce the best outcome. And according to this theory, an action is considered morally right only if it leads to the best consequences. For example, donating to charity because it helps the truly needy. The second approach is deontology, which is often associated with Immanuel Kant, which asks, what is my duty? And here, an action is considered right because it follows moral rules or duties, irrespective of the outcome. For example, telling the truth because honesty is a moral duty. And then comes virtue ethics, more closely associated with the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Interestingly, virtue ethics asks a completely different question. Not what should I do, but what kind of person should I become? And that one shift changes everything. Let's start with the absolute basic. What is virtue? Webster's defines virtue as a good moral quality or character. Then, what is virtue ethics? Virtue ethics has its roots in ancient Greek philosophy, and it was more systematically developed by Aristotle. In order to understand and live a life of moral character, it is a character based approach to morality. Instead of focusing only on the rules or the results, virtue ethics focuses on cultivating good character. According to Aristotle, we are not born virtuous. We become virtuous by repeatedly practicing good actions. He famously argued that we become just by doing just acts, and we become brave by doing brave acts. In other words, virtues are like muscles. The more we use them, the stronger they become. Some examples of virtues include courage, honesty, compassion, generosity, wisdom, temperance, that is self-control, and patience. Notice that these are not achievements, rather, they are building blocks of good character. That brings us to Aristotle's most famous contribution, the idea of the golden mean. He believed that virtue lies between two extremes, one of deficiency and the other of excess, both of which he called as vices. For example, courage is a virtue. Its deficiency leads to cowardice, whereas its excess leads to recklessness. Similarly, generosity is a virtue. The lack of it leads to stinginess, and excess causes wastefulness. While confidence is a virtue, the lack of it leads to shyness, and the excess of it leads to arrogance. Virtue, therefore, is about finding the appropriate balance rather than living at either extremes. Aristotle does not suggest that this balance is achieved by simply taking a mathematical middle. Instead, he says that it requires practical wisdom and a concept which the Greeks called as phronesis. Phronesis means the ability to take the right action. Phronesis means the ability to judge what is the right action in the right situation at the right time, done for the right reason. And it is this practical wisdom that helps us recognize where the golden mean lies in real life. Let us take a UPSC ethics case study to understand this better. Imagine you are a civil servant and a poor farmer has unknowingly submitted some incomplete documents for a government welfare scheme. A rigid, rules-based approach may simply reject the application because the documents are incomplete and move on. But a virtue ethicist would ask a different question. What would a compassionate, fair, and wise public servant do? Such an officer would not violate the rules but would exercise practical wisdom by guiding the farmer to complete the required documentation while ensuring that due process is followed. And this is precisely where phronesis becomes important. It is not about ignoring the law, it is about applying the law with fairness. However, like with every ethical theory, virtue ethics also has certain limitations. First, it does not tell us always what exactly needs to be done in a difficult moral dilemma situation. Second, different societies may emphasize different virtues. So, while virtue ethics provide guidance about character, it may not always provide a clear rule for every situation. So, that leads me to the question, is virtue ethics under the ambit of absolute ethics or relative ethics? The answer is neither. Virtue ethics does not fit into either category because unlike absolute ethics, it does not rely on rigid universal rules. In the same way, unlike moral relativism, it does not argue that morality is simply whatever a society or an individual prefers. Instead, it focuses on two things. One is developing virtues, and second is applying practical wisdom to make sound moral judgments. That is why virtue ethics is best understood as a character-based ethical theory. While reading about Aristotle, I could not help but think about something from Indian philosophy. Doesn't Aristotle's golden mean remind us of the Buddhist concept of Madhyam Marga or the middle path? I think there is a beautiful similarity. Both philosophies caution us against extremes. Both encourage balance and moderation. However, they are not exactly the same. Aristotle's golden mean aims at human flourishing, a life of excellence and fulfillment, aka eudaimonia. Lord Buddha's middle path, on the other hand, is part of the Noble Eightfold Path and ultimately aims at achieving liberation from suffering, that is nirvana. While both have different philosophical destinations but a remarkable similar appreciation for balance. Let's relate this to our own preparation. Imagine you don't feel like studying today. A consequentialist will say, study because it will help you to clear UPSC. A deontologist might say, study because it's your duty as an aspirant. While a virtue ethicist will say, study because every time you choose to study despite the discomfort, you are becoming a disciplined person. Notice the difference? Interestingly, this can also be used to enrich our GS paper 4 answers. Rather than merely writing that a civil servant should possess values like integrity, compassion, courage, etc., we can explain how these virtues are cultivated through repeated ethical choices and guided by practical wisdom to apply those virtues in real life scenarios. For example, if a public servant is under political pressure, he or she can maintain integrity by asking themselves what kind of officer I want to be, and realize that exhibiting integrity despite the pressure is a habit built through repeated ethical choices. In other words, ethical administration is not about performing one extraordinary act of honesty. It's about consistently cultivating virtues until they become part of one's character. That is the essence of virtue ethics. It is bureaucratic attitude versus democratic attitude. So, to conclude, perhaps this is the reason why virtue ethics continues to resonate with us even after more than 2000 years. It reminds us that success is not about what we achieve. It is also about who we become in the process. Whether it is preparing for UPSC, building a career, or simply trying to be a better human. Every small action is shaping our character. And maybe that's the real lesson Aristotle wanted us to remember. Thank you so much for watching. If this discussion helped you understand virtue ethics even a little bit better, let me know in the comment section. And if there is another ethics topic or any other topic that you'd like us to explore next Thursday, leave that below as well. Until next time, one more attempt, one day at a time, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.